Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're all doing okay. Feels a bit strange doing this reading of an afternoon. Used to do it in the morning, 10 o'clock. We just had to change it up for today. So from tomorrow, every morning we'll be back to 10 o'clock in the morning. So for those of you that didn't join me last week, we're reading Calm the F Down, and it's a book by Sarah Knight. And it's a lovely sort of help self book for people who perhaps suffer with anxiety or worries and just struggle to be able to, deal with those problems, myself being one of them. So it's, a bit of a self-help book with a lot of humour in there as well. So get yourselves nice and relaxed, and I am going to start this afternoon's read. You snooze, you lose. I personally know several people who have let a manageable debt, i.e. a parking ticket, credit card bill, or tax return, etc., turn into the worst possible outcome simply by avoidance. In some cases, the avoidance was due to serious mental health issues. And as I've said, I'm not an authority when it comes to treating an illness that could cause someone to blow up their financial life via inaction. But I am an authority on slapping some sense into the rest of you. And I'm not talking about people who avoid paying a bill they cannot afford either. That's a whole other pooch to screw. I'm talking about people who can afford it, but don't recognise that paying said bill needs to be prioritised above half a dozen other daily tasks, the putting off of which would not result in losing their car, their good credit score, or their split-level ranch. I consider it my sworn duty to help you prevent such outcomes. And if I have to call you out on your shit to get the job done, then so be it. Maybe Google Lawyer will reveal an extension you can file for, or some kind of aid for which you can apply. All I know is the longer you wait, the more interest and penalties you'll accrue. And if you think the government is bleeding you dry now, just wait till they pronounce you DOA in federal court. My girlfriend told me I'm bad in bed. You have every right to be hurt, miffed, or purely puzzled, but nothing good will come of indulging those emotional puppies for more than an afternoon's romp. Once you've recovered from what was undoubtedly the greatest shock of your life and taken stock, you'll find that you have a couple of options. It's up to you to decide which one wears the RIO crown. You could break up with her and await your introduction to a woman more appreciative of your talents, or you could take her criticisms to heart and make some changes to your technique. I broke a semi-important bone. Clearly, the first thing you should do is seek medical treatment, but on your way to the ER, or once the anaesthesia wears off, you can spend some time cataloguing the consequences and making or changing your plans accordingly to your projected recovery time. Can you still go to work? What other daily responsibilities may be hampered by your tetchy tibia? Be flexible. For example, my husband does all of our grocery shopping and dinner cooking. So when he broke his collarbone on an ill-advised motorbike outing, we had to make alternate eating arrangements for the next 4 to 6 weeks. They're called Eggos. I suggest you look into them. I can't fit into my bridesmaid dress for this wedding I'm in today. Assuming your RIO is to appear as a member of the bridal or groomal party and fate your friends whilst wearing the official wedding frock of their choosing, you may have to resign yourself to looking a bit overstuffed in the photos, then accidentally spill some red wine on your duds during dinner and change into that roomy yet wedding appropriate outfit you totally forgot you had in your trunk. I failed my driving test. Same. The way I dealt with it was to silently curse the trick stop sign, moan about it for a day, then retake the test at the earliest possible opportunity. If you fail again and again, maybe you should practice some more, or take public transportation, or commit to making enough money that you can afford a chauffeur for life. #goals. The pipes in my house froze and burst. As a relatively new homeowner myself, I am continually amazed by the volume of shit that can go wrong in, under, around, and on top of one's house. That any domicile-based fail is happening in the place where you also need to sleep, let alone potentially work and parent, makes it potentially triply frustrating. As such, you might be tempted to waste freak-out funds, shaking your fists at the sky gods when you realise what went down behind your kitchen walls. But you need to quell that impulse and direct your energies instead to the much more urgent task of finding a good plumber who can show up on short notice. Recently, I decided to get a Whopper with cheese at 6:30 a.m. While driving, I dropped my cheeseburger and rear-ended someone at the stoplight. Who among us hasn't had the urge to consume processed meat in the wee hours? Have it your way, indeed. Anonymous survey taker. I hope that after you had a good chuckle at the absurdity of your predicament, you swiftly and responsibly checked both cars for damage and, if necessary, contacted the respective insurance companies. I also hope you went back for a replacement Whopper. You'll need your strength to explain to your boss why you're an hour late to work and covered in special sauce. My best friend is pissed at me. Is it because you spilled red wine in that bridesmaid dress she so lovingly selected a year ago, and in which you now resemble a lilac taffeta sausage? No. Okay, well, whatever the reason is, run a quick assessment of what you may need to apologise for and how soon you can fit that into your busy schedule of reading profane self-help books. If you're in the wrong and your RIO is to remain besties, then get on with it. Or if this incident provides you a convenient path toward dialing back your and Marsha's codependency tendencies, that's fine too. See who blinks first. I've had to go on a severely limited diet due to health issues. Remember when I said that everything that's going on in your life sucks exactly as hard as you think it does, and that I'll never be the one to tell you it's going to be okay, or it's not so bad? Well, consider me a woman of my word. If you're going down this road, you have my deepest sympathies. And please know that by taking a logical look at the problem, I am in no way invalidating your emotional distress. Dietary restrictions are awful and shitty. They rob us of one of the greatest of life's pleasures and are often onerous and expensive to follow through on. Suckage of the highest orders. Calming the F down will be challenging, but you do have some fancy new tools now to help you get started. Can you plot revenge on gluten? I don't see why not. Dealing with it will be a combo of planning ahead and in-the-moment coping when faced with a brunch menu, past hors d'oeuvres, or a hospital cafeteria. Besides travelling everywhere with appropriate snacks, what do? Take stock. What's on offer and what won't aggravate your condition? Realistic ideal outcome, getting enough to eat and not getting sick. Triage. Depending on your situation, this may be the time to deploy your pocket snacks to ensure you don't get hangry, then seek out a waiter to ask about ingredients and substitutions. Also, for what it's worth, I've heard oat milk is nice. Really heavy shit. Oh, to be honest, I've been dreading this part ever since I started writing Calm the F Down. Not because it's chock full of the stuff of nightmares, although that too, but because I'm apprehensive about claiming to be an authority on dealing with the absolute worst that life has to offer. It's a lot of responsibility for a potty-mouthed anti-guru. And while I have experienced some really heavy shit in my time, I've by no means cornered the market. The problems I'll be addressing in the last segment of our lightning round are among the most painful and difficult, if not impossible, for anyone to solve. In most cases, I doubt they're even the problems you came to Calm the F Down for help with. Certainly, there are more thorough tomes written by more qualified persons than me on subjects like divorce, disease, and death that you could lay your hands on if you were so inclined. As you read this section, you may wonder who I think I am to tell you how to cope with your marriage falling apart or prep for chemotherapy. What right do I have to natter on about the productive aftermath of a home invasion or getting through the emotionally and physically devastating trials of infertility? Not to mention advising you re nuclear fallout and bed bugs, two things with which I have exactly zero experience. So far, at least. Thanks, Obama. You're entitled to wonder these things. As I've said, I've wondered them too. But I believe in the power of the no worries method to help you even in your darkest moments. Precisely because it's a different way to look at those dark moments than you may be used to getting from friends and family, or even from your therapist. Which is to say that if you find the next few pages of advice brutally pragmatic and emotionless, well, that's kind of the point. I wrote Calm the F Down in service to the notion that nobody else in your life is giving you brutally pragmatic, emotionless advice about your anxiety and stress and problems because they're going to be too busy telling you everything is going to be okay and glossing over the nuts and bolts of exactly how to get there. And much like 77.4% of my survey respondents, that bugs the shit out of me. That said, my suggestions for dealing with your really heavy shit come with the same qualifier I've supplied a few times in this book: anxiety, panic, depression, and trauma may be candidates for the no worries treatment, but they are also no joke. If you were going through any of the stuff I'm about to give a pithy paragraph's worth of advice on dealing with, it would mean a lot to me if you would also talk to a professional about what you can do to feel better and move forward. Thank you in advance for humouring me. With that, we enter the third and final phase of total shitstorms, a catalogue of terror. If the first of these sections was like easing into a warm bath, this one is more like waking up in a tub full of ice and discovering you're down a kidney. And although I don't necessarily have all the answers, hopefully I can get you pointed in the right direction. I got robbed. Whether your pocket was picked, your safe was cracked, or your car was jacked, you're bound to be spooked. And depending on the thieves' haul, you could be a little or a lot inconvenienced. Throw in any grievous bodily harm, and we've got a trifecta of shit to deal with. And that's after you've managed to calm down. But solely in terms of dealing with it, first secure your personal safety. Call the cops. Think you might be concussed? Call an ambulance. A friend of mine's house was robbed recently with his kids in it. He was meant to be performing in a concert that night, but instead he bailed on the gig, got the bashed in front door boarded up, and stood guard over his family until the morning. Priorities, pal, priorities. You can apply the same triage process to getting reimbursed for the things you lost and replacing the most urgent ones first, if you can afford it and or your insurance comes through. You should also start making the rounds of, so this happened. By that, I mean, tell people what's up so they can help you out or at least assuage some of your more pressing concerns. For example, if you've got a deadline looming, you'll feel a million and 2% better once you inform whoever needs informing that your laptop was stolen and they undoubtedly grant you an extension, because whomever they are is not an asshole. This is a terrible, awful, no good, very bad situation. No doubt about it. But neither a prolonged freak out nor a haphazard effort at dealing with it is going to help you salvage your shit. Take stock, identify your ideal outcome, and then pursue it once concentrated, most urgent step at a time. I'm getting divorced. This could be happening to you, or it could be your behest, but either way, it's probably awful for all concerned. I'm not trying to minimize the emotional turmoil you're going through when I say one thing you could do is get logical and prioritize, but maybe you could give it a shot. If divorce is in the offing and there's nothing more you can do to stop your marriage from dissolving, now's a good time to focus on what you can control and on achieving your realistic ideal outcome. Maybe that RIO is to part ways as amicably as possible. Maybe it's to get the house, the cars, and full custody of the Instant Pot. Maybe it's just to get through the whole process without letting your kids see you cry. It won't be easy, but if you can create your emotional puppies for short stretches even, in service to those concrete goals, at least you'll be dealing with it in a more productive way. Plus, lamb tagine in just 35 minutes. We're struggling to have a baby. Jesus, I'm sorry. I told you it was about to get dark up in this piece. I know virtually nothing about pregnancy except that I never want to experience it, which probably makes me the least qualified guru, auntie or otherwise, to field advice in this topic. In fact, I'm reminded of a conversation I had with a dear friend several years ago, well before I developed the no worries method. She and her husband had been trying and failing to conceive for a long time. And over a plate of Middle Eastern apps, I confidently told her, it'll be okay. I'm sure you guys will work it out. In the spirit of full disclosure, I may have even said something along the lines of, you just need to relax. In other words, I responded in exact the wrong way. The look on her face was part misery, part second-degree murder. Admittedly, it's possible that I'm about to overcompensate in the other direction, but in for a penny, in for a round of IVF. If you're experiencing that same mix of anguish and anger at your circumstances as my friend was, I wonder now, very respectfully, if it might help to create your emu puppies for a little while and send the Logic Cats out to do a recon. Take a breath and take stock. Where are you in terms of your or your partner's childbearing years? Where are you in the process of trying? Have you done everything you can, or are there still stones left unturned? How much more time, energy, and money can you afford to spend? After confronting these questions, you may not have the answers you want, and you will almost surely still be sad and angry, but at least you'll have some clarity about where you stand and what your options are for moving forward. Clarity is good. Whatever remains realistic and ideal for you is where you can continue to spend time, energy, and money in a productive way, whether it's to keep doing what you're doing or to look into alternatives. In this way, you're working hard and smart towards reaching your goal of becoming a parent. And you can feel good about that even when you can't help but feel bad about the parts of the process you simply can't control. If you're dealing with this, I know you've been through the ringer, as have so many of my friends and family. And I know that a rational approach might seem devoid of empathy, but it also might help you to accept where you are and get to where you want to be. Right, 1 second, there's just somebody at my front door. Bear with me. So sorry, it was just the Amazon man leaving me a parcel. Oh, right, okay. France has run out of butter. Fact, there was a butter shortage in French supermarkets in late 2017. And I'm not going to say it caused me heart palpitations when I read the headlines, but I'm not going to say it didn't either. Stay vigilant out there, people. If it happens again, you'll need to bone up on best hoarding practices. And if you think this qualifies as merely tedious, then you, monsieur, have never eaten a decent croissant. A natural disaster just hit. I riffed a little on hurricanes earlier in the book, but if you've also got your tornadoes, floods, wildfires, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, and the star of my most terrifying nightmares, tsunamis. I hesitate to make generalizations, let alone jokes about this stuff, when my husband's family lived through Hurricane Katrina. My friend's mum lost her home to Harvey, and just the other day, an earthquake 300 miles away rumbled our house, causing the couch I was sitting on to vibrate like a by-the-hour hotel bed and killing at least 15 people at its epicenter in Haiti. This shit is messed up. But if you are lucky enough to wake up the morning after a mega calamity and you still have breath in your lungs, well, you are knee-deep in dealing with it. And before you can hope to achieve a full fix or get started on some salvage jobs, you'll be starting from a place of basic survival. Water, food, shelter. You need them, so it's time to find them. But you know that. This is really just me giving voice to your lizard brain, reminding you that your instincts for preserving, I couldn't read that word then, I'm so sorry. Preserving your personal safety are in and of themselves your best blueprint for dealing with it. I was diagnosed with something terrible. Folks, I've already accepted the reality that come publication, I will be salvaged by no small number of readers, accusing me of playing fast and loose with tragedy, travesty, and heartbreak. All I can say is the book isn't called Feel Better, Sweetie, This Too Shall Pass. As I have stressed repeatedly, and undoubtedly to my editors, though not to the legal department's irritation, I am not a doctor. I'm not an expert in anything, really, unless you count hating the New York Yankees with a fiery passion. In these very pages, I have admitted that anxiety panic and ostriching my own instinctual coping mechanisms, and that I often rely on the wonder of prescription pharmaceuticals to calibrate my freak-out-prone brain and body. And yet also, in these very pages, I've tried to show that it's possible to calm down and deal with things in a more effective, efficient way than by remaining committed to the anxious, sad, angry, avoidy, flailing processes you and I both heretofore enjoyed. With regard to a major league health problem, I harbour no illusions that either one of us could just calmly accept something like chronic or, dear God, potentially fatal illness. But personally, I would try really, really hard to do as much productive, helpful, effective worrying as I could. Also, who are we kidding? I would ugly cry, emotionally eat, and request a medical marijuana prescription. Bedbugs. I never had bedbugs, but my friends did, and their lives became a month-long blur of toxic chemicals, mattress bags, and dry cleaning receipts. Maybe I can get them to do a guest post on my website. Stay tuned. Meanwhile, I can tell you that we had termites last year, and I'm proud to say I bypassed freaking out entirely. Once we discovered their happy little piles of frass collecting in the closet under the stairs, I went into the deal with it zone. I tell you, vacuumed up the leavings, removed all the food and dishes and contaminable shit from the house, called an exterminator to fumigate, then stripped every stitch of treated fabric and had it laundered twice. Then, advised by the exterminator to go the extra and deeply annoying step of removing the affected wood entirely, which would require rebuilding said closet under the stairs, said, hell yes, get it done. A week later, we were footloose and frass-free. Death. You've probably been wondering when I was going to get to death. Not hamster or cat death either, but full-blown human beings ceasing to be. You've been whiling away the hours, waiting for me to walk out into the mother of all shitstorms, wondering just exactly how little Miss Anti-Guru proposes to calm the F down about and deal with death. And maybe I should have stopped short of including this section to avoid tarnishing what precious authority and goodwill I've earned thus far. But we all have to deal with death eventually, our own or the mortality of our loved ones. And ignoring that would make me either willfully ignorant or a dirty, rotten cheater, neither of which I want as my epitaph. Additionally, I think about the death all the time, so I might as well exploit my own overactive imagination for fun and profit. To get the full effect, let's back up a bit to shit that hasn't happened yet and talk about anxiety over the mere prospect of death. For me, this is the mother of all tarantulas. It's where almost all my smaller anxieties lead. Like, I just saw the bus driver yawn, easily metasizes into what if we die in a highway pileup and my parents have to clean out our house, which means my night table drawer, which means, Then once I get that far, there's nowhere worse to go. It winds up being a relief to stare this terrifying what if directly in the kisser so I can defang it with my trusty CTFD toolkit and move on. Yawning bus drivers. Think about probability. This guy drives a 7 a.m. route between New York and Maine 5 days a week. He's entitled to be a little tired, but this is not the first rodeo, and he's packing a 20-ounce Americano with sugar. A heavily reported article by a trusted news source that predicts the world will become uninhabitable by 2040. Ask, is this something I can control? I accept what I can't change about the situation, most of it, and turn my focus to what I can. Vote for legislators who believe in climate science, reduce my own carbon footprint, move further inland in 10 years. I discard, I organise, I calm the F down. Again, I'm not going to claim it always works. Anxiety, panic, and despondence are bad enough. When you add pain and suffering to the mix, you can get overwhelmed fast. But these techniques do work for me a lot of the time, and that's way better than never. Someone I know is terminally ill or inching ever closer to simply terminally old. Acknowledge the inevitability. This category 5 is already formed. It's going to be excruciating when I have to face it. So I torture myself when I don't yet. When I'm gripped by the pointy little teeth of these particular emotional puppies, I pry them loose, logically, rationally, and methodically. I bargain with myself. I'll avoid freaking out about this now and focus on something I can control, like picking up the phone and calling my ailing friend or grandmother. Before the day comes, I have to take my fine feathered head out of the sand to mourn them. That these mental negotiations actually succeed in tamping down my anxious flare-ups is almost as much of a miracle as someone beating stage 5 cancer. I think that alone renders them worthy of your consideration. But of course, there's also the kind of death you don't see coming. The sudden, unpredictable, unfathomable news that takes you from anxious worrying to devastating reality. Shit that has already happened. I could try to soften the blow by saying I hope you never have reason to take my advice on this front. But we both know you will, and insincerity is not my forte. So when that total shitstorm lands, how do you deal with it? My doctor once told me that a sense of injustice is one of the biggest triggers of anxiety and panic. And I can think of no greater injustice than the death of someone you love, whether anticipated or unexpected. When it happens, you're likely to experience a range of prolonged, chaotic emotions. Sadness, certainly, even rage. But while depression and anger are among the 5 stages of grief made famous in Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's seminal book on death and dying, I will also gently point out that acceptance is the final stage. And by now, you know a little something about finding your way there. Not necessarily to accepting the outcome itself, but simply accepting the reality of it, enabling you to move through it, past it, and on with your life. I've been there, getting the call, crying for hours, stumbling through days, wondering if anything would ever hurt more or if this would ever hurt less. And in those moments, I remind myself that I'll get to acceptance. And someday, because this is what humans do. None of us live forever, which means that every day, whether we know it or not, we encounter someone in the process of surviving someone else's death. For me, in recent years, it's been a friend who lost her brother, a colleague who lost his husband, and each member of my family who lost in one man their partner, father, sibling, uncle, and grandfather. Watching all of them get through their days and move forward with their lives shows me that it is possible to do the same. It won't be easy and it's going to hurt like hell, but it is possible. Right, we're going to finish there today. God, that's making me feel a little bit teary there. I think that's my problem. I'm always thinking about death, and sometimes your head can get a bit carried away with you, can't it? So anyway, on that happy note, I'm going to finish there for today. Tomorrow, my reading will be back at 10 o'clock in the morning. And then 11 o'clock tomorrow morning, we've got tea and toast. Don't know what we're going to talk about yet. I'm going to have a think about that in a minute. So have a great afternoon, everyone. The sun's out now. So although it's cold, go and get yourself a bit fresh air if you can. And have a great evening. And I'll see you all tomorrow.